All right, gang. I am joined on the show right now. I'm super stoked to have with us a guy who's worked in all kinds of departments in film production. As a matter of fact, on IMDb, I think he has just about one credit, at least in every one that you can have available to him. But the ones that I know that our watchers and listeners are going to really know his work is like from the art department to production design and even special effects. The great Mick Strawn, thank you very much for coming and talking to me, man.
How's it going? I'm I'm here. I'm here.
Definitely got to like the vibe of being here after the last like 4.5 ish years the world has been through. So if you can say that with a deep breath, you're definitely winning, I would say.
Yeah, anybody still standing these days, right?
Yeah.
It's like our bar has come so far down. It's like 4 years ago we judged people as to whether they had pants on or not. That's not even a criteria anymore. I'm not wearing pants now.
Well, if you're not leaving the house, it's like, why even put them on?
We we've all become very zen about everything, haven't we?
Yeah.
Hey, whatever.
But, I mean, man, the career you have had, Mick, is, I would say, growing up as a kid who discovered horror in the mid to late 80s. And then, kind of, once my dad thought it was suitable enough that I wasn't going to be up all night, we backtracked into the late 60s, 70s. And then, like, we kind of caught back up. A lot of like how people do with the Star Wars franchise, my father did with me in horror movies.
Yeah.
And, but you broke in on like getting ready to actually get to talk to you and just like seeing everything that you've been attached to. You broke in to all these awesome franchises at awesome times in which to break into them. It's pretty cool to have on your resume.
What I've never understood is, and I have a lot of friends that are my peers that worked through the same period in the 80s and on, and I don't understand exactly how I had this Zelig like appearances on films that people still remember, which at the time were not. But the thing is, I certainly had a lot of films, but never films that had any amount of respect whatsoever. But they're still around. People
Yeah.
can still remember them. I mean, it's like if I had worked. I mean, there were films that were just so, classic at the time, like like Kramer versus Kramer or Paper Tiger or stuff like that. And all these weird films, all these films that were, primary, that
Mm-hmm.
nobody knows anything about anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're just gone. And yet I kind of like skipped from, like the Nightmare on Elm Streets to the Leatherfaces to the Critters to I worked on the Hidden, uh, Hercules, Mortal Kombat. Just the list goes on and on and on. And it's, if you want a great career, just accept everything and let there be accidents.
Yeah. I mean, that is one thing that they did a good job in film school with us, is being able to, the importance of being able to try to like network and meet as many people as possible, and the importance of knowing that the proverbial dream job isn't going to be like the first thing that you freaking have offered to you. So you definitely have to be open to saying yes when you can recognize the opportunity comes.
Yeah.
And you're being open to it has led to this resume that is freaking a mile long. And like I said, is dope. I mean, you hit on all these great franchises that you worked on, but one of the early ones that you worked on, was Tales from the Dark Side.
Tales from the Dark Side. And I had so many great stories about that. I mean, Tales from the Dark Side was literally was filmed in this this little tiny warehouse in South Central LA. And in fact, it was right down the street from the Farmer John slaughterhouse, right? And the thing is we had pig death Thursdays, right? Every Thursday they would kill the pigs, and there's two things that you distinctly remember from that is that all day long, when you went outside of the stage, that you could hear the pigs screaming, right? Oh, that was one, but the other was the smell of fear and death.
Jeez.
It was like, yeah, Pig Death Thursdays. What can I say? And we had all these famous and semi-famous people. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar did,
yeah,
he did one. The girl who played Mallory on Family Ties. Can't think of her name.
I know exactly. I can picture her on it, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we just had all these people through there, and nobody knew what they were doing, and everybody got $75 a day. It was no matter what. I think that the DP probably made more, but none of the rest of us did, right? Absolutely everybody, and there was just some crazy things. I mean, it was the beginning. It was kind of like the beginning of just on the edge of respectability of non-union films, non-union work. I mean, and in it you made $75 a day, and your only status was that you did better than the last film that you were on, or the last whatever you worked on, and so we all wound up down there, banging these sets together at night and filming during the day.
Did you guys have any inkling, like the way that you talk about kind of the mood seems like you guys are all in it together. You're humbled by the fact that you're getting the steady work and everything, but it doesn't seem like, or at least you hadn't mentioned yet, that you guys are like carrying around with you the fact that you're doing the show that was going to end up becoming anything that was near as like revered as what it was.
But you can't, they call the 80s the second golden age of horror, right?
Right.
Well, the thing is it's impossible to know that you're in the middle of something like that.
That's true.
How do you know? How do you know that all the stars had aligned? Because basically, look, we were still making films the way that they had been done, since the early, I tell people this all the time. If you were a grip and you had walked off of a stage in 1939 and then walked into any stage, like even on Nightmare on Elm Street 4, right?
Mm-hmm.
There would be just only minor differences. I mean, you're still working with like this gripology was all the same. The cameras were pretty much the same. The lighting technology was absolutely the same. Mm-hmm. I mean, all of this was just, I mean, we were still using, back then we were still using these huge paddles for lighting. It wasn't like plugs or the lighting was run so that there was this enormous paddle, right? And you would take this paddle and there would be a row, there would be this thing that looked like a square box, right? And literally the paddles fit right into the square box. And it was a holdover from like the 30s or 40s, right? And they were still built the same way. In fact, the way that the paddle was shaped whenever we needed time, and especially on Tales from the Dark Side, is that when we needed to buy time, we would, everybody would say, well, nobody would listen to the art department, right? So what we learned to do is we would just sabotage it. And what we would take is, if you took clear tape and you put it around the edge of the paddle, right? So because that whole edge of the paddle was copper, right? And the paddle was like made out of like Bakelite, right?
Yeah.
And so if you put clear tape around it, there was no way when you're using those little flashlights in your mouth, putting them in your mouth and trying to figure out what was going on. You could never see the tape, and it would shut production down, and you would have time to go finish what you were doing. And the thing is all the first AD and the PM production manager is like, no, we can't give you an hour. That's impossible. I mean, you're just going to have to make it work.
Yeah.
So you just freaking sabotage the fuckers.
Did they ever catch you guys?
Oh God, no, absolutely not. The funny thing is literally what we would have to do is we would work out our problems, and then we would have to go take the tape off of the paddle and plug it, and all of a sudden everybody go, oh, okay, it's fixed. Okay, it's fixed. And it was like this strange mix of people who were working sides off of studio work or working in between studio work that had that were coming on, and they would do a few days and then they would go back and do a show like on one of the big stages and stuff like that. So you had those weird mixture of people, and there were a lot of theater people that came in and out, and it was a bunch of incredibly flaky people that were learning to be responsible for the first time in their lives.
These sometimes put on some of the best productions, though.
Well, the funny thing is TJ Castronova was the executive producer. And I don't know if you know who TJ Castronova is. TJ Castronova was one of the mice for Batman. For what was it? I can't think of which character it was. They had the three characters that were back. I think it was the Penguin. Had three characters that backed him up that were his evil henchmen, right?
Right.
This guy was one of the henchmen.
Huh.
And I remember sitting in a production meeting one day and reaching and grabbing what I thought was my cup of water and just about like this, and it was TJ's vodka. It was like just a cup of just straight vodka, just sitting right there on the desk. Oh my God. I literally, the only time in my life I actually did the spray, the comedy spray, right? Across the table.
That's great.
But we had a blast back then, I mean, nobody made anything, and everybody somehow won, and certain people maintained a certain level of competency, and somehow or other we made it all work.
Well, you go in pretty close to, just a couple years later, you're entering the Elm Street franchise, which you do work on Nightmare 4, and then that turns into doing some stuff for Freddy's Nightmares too.
Yeah, well, I did Nightmare on Elm Street 3 and then 4.
Well, you did Dream Warriors too.
Yes.
Oh wow, that's pretty cool, because we just had Ken and Jennifer at our local con that we host. And Ken, one of the only Dream Warriors to make it out of 3 and into 4.
A really good friend of mine. He and I toured towards the end of the pandemic. We toured up up in the Northeast for probably 2 months.
Oh, wow.
Just doing because they weren't doing 3-day cons anymore. They were doing, 1-day events.
Right.
And so we lined up a whole bunch of them. We had an agent buddy of ours line up a whole bunch of them, and we just kind of went from one to the other, just skipping hotels and skipping, all through the Pacific, or through not the Pacific North, the Northeast, right?
Wow, that would be a pretty cool, almost like just like journal or something to have read about the different stuff that has taken place with the two of you guys over the course of however long now.
Oh, he's incredible. I've always liked him. I've always liked Ken a lot. He is he's just a very sweet human being. He really is. He's awesome. In fact, I have to say that the whole group, out of all the groups that films that I've worked on, the group that did Nightmare on Elm Street 3 and 4 collectively, it has stayed the tightest out of everybody
for that franchise. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, we're always doing cons together. We're really good friends. We talk to each other all the time. I have Robert and Lisa and Ken and all of them on speed dial, if that were such a thing anymore, right?
Yeah. I will say that definitely like rings true, because the Friday guys, you have like the collective Jasons, you see them kind of like come together, but they're from the entire franchise, not just one or two from that franchise.
Right.
Halloween, you don't really see it.
Yeah, it's actually it's the group from it is more the group from Nightmare on Elm Street 4 pulled together with some of the people from 3. That it is just we're all great buds. We've been together for years. It's you have an interesting bond between them.
To be doing the work that you did for that franchise has to just be wild to think about, getting to design that kind of stuff, because from a fan, every October that they do like a haunted house at Universal or something, and you're walking through the set design of that, like
it's mine. Yeah.
It's like, this is like, for you, it's got to be doubly mind-blowing. From just like a fan of the franchise, it's like, damn, they built Freddy's boiler room. But did you, I guess, before we even talk about designing the real deal, did you go to any of the haunted houses and see them like as they've rebuilt from your guys' movies?
Not really. I have heard about a lot of them, and I haven't actually been involved in too many of them. Kind of reminds me of work.
Yeah.
I have my own little recreation of it behind me.
Standing up right now?
Yeah, well, it's just my steel background.
Oh, okay. But when you came onto that franchise, knowing that this is kind of like what 3 was going to be, had you seen 1 and 2? Were you a fan?
You know what? Here's the thing. I worked with Peter Chesney on putting together I was working in an effects house with Peter Chesney. Now, Peter Chesney was the mechanical. He did all the mechanical effects on it. Okay. And I then helped engineer them because I was running his effects house. So I was turning in the final billing, for Peter, because they didn't have a director yet, and we had gone as far as we could go without a director. And I went down to to the office in Robinson for on Robertson for New Line Cinema, and I was waiting to get up to the 8th floor, and Jerry Olson had just been hired to be an executive producer on it, and he steps up to the elevator. Just as the elevator lands, he steps up, and I knew him because we had worked together on a film called Quite Cool, which was a New Line film, and I had just done the construction for that. And we got onto the elevator, and on the way up, I made an elevator pitch to be the all I knew was the art director, right? I would have gone for production designer, but I wasn't aware that there was such a thing. So I said, look, I want to be your art director. I've done all the effects so I already am really, into the script and know it all. And by the time we got to the top, I got the job. Now, the thing is then they showed me the first 2 films in a viewing. Literally back then you didn't pass back and forth tapes or CDs or anything like that. You literally had to go to a viewing stage, and every lab had several viewing stages. You know what that is? It's like seats maybe 25 to 50 people. Sure. It's a little tiny theater, right?
Right, like mini movie theater.
Yeah. Whenever you want to pretend like in a film or something like the big producer of the studio, right? He's always sitting in one of those, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I really like your work there, Bob. I really, yeah. So I got to sit and see them both there. And I sat through Nightmare on Elm Street, and I thought it was interesting. I didn't like the ending that much. And then I sat through the second one. And the second one made sense for about 15 minutes. And then it didn't. And then it didn't. And I just had no idea what the fuck was happening for the rest of it. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, it's pretty lame. And the funny thing is then later in my career, I worked with Jack Shoulder on The Hidden. Right. And he was the director of that. In fact, he and I live now on the East Coast, and I literally see him all the time. But so the idea was that then I would learn. I was shown the first 2 films, and then they said, now we got together in a meeting, and we were like, here's the thing: is we want to stop that trend of getting lower and lower and lower numbers for every sequel. And we think that we have a great idea for the third, which I already knew the script and the concept of, and it was Wes's idea to get around the Superman problem. The Superman problem being that, Superman is so powerful, you need kryptonite in order to make him interesting, right?
Yeah.
But Freddy had a Superman problem in that everybody has to sleep eventually, right? And then Freddy would come into your dreams and get you, and that's it, right?
Right.
So they came up with the conceit of having somebody have the ability to bring other people into their dreams. Okay, that was one, and then in meetings we said, well, we're going to wind up doing 3 things to make this a cut above all the rest. We're going to do that. The first thing is that we have the story advantage, that we're bringing people into so we can actually make a story out of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing is they were going to let Robert Englund be Robert Englund, because you had an incredible advantage in that Robert Englund was the monster, right?
Yeah.
Because he's so fucking good.
Yeah.
He is a great actor. And by the way, Robert English is one of the nicest guys in the world, and absolutely has, when he came out of the womb and they slapped him and he started talking, he hasn't stopped talking since. I mean, he would, but he's really so sharp, right?
And it's a testament, I will just say, to the Freddy character. Like all the other franchises that you compare, conventions or fans or whatever, it's always, compared to Jason, Michael Myers, Leatherface. None of those guys really talk.
None of them are strong on personality. Their personality has to do with how fast they can do this.
Yeah.
Right? That really, come on, let's face it. You can't have a Jason without somebody going, right?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So anyway, so they were going to let Robert off the chain. You were going to let, that was his. And then I came in with, okay, we're not going to do, this isn't going to be a location film. We're going to pull this on and we're going to make sets and we're going to go a little bit wacky with everything. And I had the concept of it being not so much a horror film as a journey film, sort of like Sinbad the Sailor, that kind of thing. Because the thing is that it's all the trappings that you make around the killings, right, that really make the film. So I thought that we would make it the journey, right? And so you had that feeling of going from one magical place to another. That was what I wanted, and I knew that I couldn't do it on location. I'd have to do them as sets, and that's what we did. And I think that between those three things, and the thing is I had it in my head that I wanted it to be like going to one of those carnivals that comes out of town and pop down in the middle of Walmart, right? And all the kids go out there and I wanted it to be that kind of magical comes out of nowhere journey, right? Yeah. And so when we did Nightmare on Elm Street 4, all I could think of in my mind as a guide was, well, now I'm gonna, if that one was a carnival in a Walmart parking lot, then this one's gonna be Disneyland. That's what I did.
And that's, the whole thing, just goes up to another level. And the franchise, that's the thing too, is really, all the stories that have encompassed number 2 and the tonality of 2 to 1 is so greatly different. It's not until 3 and 4 that you can almost kind of see a true direction, like mainstay of the franchise.
Well, yeah, I say this. I say that whole look. The idea that the journey has got to be magic. All that was my concept, and you see it really strongly in 3 and 4. And then my sister took over just the design aspect of the 5th. On 3 and 4, I was as involved with the effects as I was in the design, right? And then I just, that's why I still think that the 3rd and 4th are the strongest out of the series, right?
I definitely would say those are the movies that always get tied to when someone references the Friday franchise. I would say a solid 85-90% of the time the direction will lean towards Dream Warriors. And
then you know what, I'll tell you, Dream Warriors is a better film, but secretly I think everybody likes watching snippets out of Nightmare on Elm Street 4 better. Well, because Dream Warriors is a big piece, right? And it's got some great kills and stuff in it, but Dream Warriors just has that fucking look.
Yeah, and on the 4th one too, like you say, like everything, I would imagine that this is the case, across the board, but you really notice it in horror movies, not just yours in particular, but just like movies when you see like a couple years of advanced like development in film production. So
Right.
to get to go back to this franchise, but you have like more at your disposal, that's got to be kind of cool to get to do.
Well, oddly on 3 and then 4, we had more money on 3 than they did on 2, and then we had a lot more money on 4 than we did on 3. And that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But I think it was money well spent because we literally made New Line Cinema.
Yeah, these are like every time that you, and I'm speaking generally, like I'm 37, so I'm speaking like specifically to the kids of my age. Every time we put in the VHS tapes back in the day and we saw the New Line logo flash before the rollout, like
your heart goes aflare.
Yes. Like if you are a horror fan in that era, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So
yeah, absolutely.
But what was like some of the fun stuff? You mentioned in 3 that like really taking the gloves off as far as the design aspects. What was some of the fun stuff in 4?
Well, in 4, literally all of it. I mean, the sequence of I would say the sequence of Alice being sucked into the theater.
Yeah.
I mean, wow, what a huge deal that was. I mean, that was filmed all over town. I mean, she walks in, she's in the theater. She is literally in a theater that's up in Pasadena. But when she's upstairs, she's that we rebuilt that whole balcony area on a stage and had it hooked up to a couple of tractors so that they could be lifted up like this and go completely perpendicular.
Jeez.
So that you got that, so that the popcorn is spilling in that, and she's spilling forward and going up to the edge. And then we took that edge piece, and we cut that out of the set that was up on the stage, and we took that down in front of and we recreated those beams, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we put the beams down the side of the old Beacons building, which was 8 stories, and it was a refrigeration building for storing furs, right? It was up in Hollywood, and it was just for storing your furs because they had to be stored cold, right? So it was a concrete. The side of it was a concrete slab that was the depth of a lot, right? Probably 150 feet, and it went straight up almost 100 feet.
Jeez.
Right? And then we strung up the beams, and we pulled them up the side of that so that the beams are sitting on the side of it. And then we lifted that piece of the front of the balcony that we built, right? Mm-hmm. And literally lifted, put a stunt person there holding it and lifted it up 8 stories. and then she falls, and we film it in slow motion. She falls into a green screen that's stretched over a bag and winds up in front of the Craven, which was my sister's great dressing job, was the Craven, right?
Oh, wow.
She came on originally as my set dresser, and then I just put her in as a co-production designer, and we did 3 and 4 that way.
That's really cool.
And basically, she did the dressing, and I came up with all the rest of the wacky stuff, and coordinated the design with all the weird set pieces and that kind of stuff.
So to backtrack a little bit, and going back to number 3, in doing all the coordination with the set pieces and the shooting of the classic marionette sequence.
Ah, my favorite. Yeah. Yeah. That was shot. Basically, most of the marionette pieces, where he's in bed and the arms are slashed, is we went over to his, and I can't think it was a Cannon.
Yes.
I can't remember. I think it was Canham, right? And we literally went to his studio, and we set up that bedroom, the hospital room, right? So that one we set it up and we lit it and just left it that way so that he could do all the so that he could do all the pulling the bits out and do the claymation Freddy coming up at the foot of the bed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So basically he was so a camera guy would come over and operate the camera whenever they were ready to actually roll it, right? And he would go over there, and so then there was a rig that we moved to Westwood, which was down at the old Veterans Administration Hospital, right? Which has this really spooky arched feeling, the very 1920s kind of like, huge building with like half Gothic, half Spanish Revival architecture, right?
For sure.
And we're moving down those halls, and we had this huge rig that was the puppeting rig, right? And then that followed him across the nurses' station, right? You see him. That's where he's like that, across there. And then the falling part was a combination of shots from our stage, where the kids are gathered around the window, to a building that's on the UCLA campus. It's the main watchtower there. So that's where he falls, and it's pretty interesting. A very, very complicated sequence. And here's one interesting thing about that. So they got done. They put that together roughly, and they were showing it in a screening room, and Rachel Talalay and I went to see, because we wanted to know if there was anything that we needed to do to finish that sequence up. And so we went across town. We saw the just the first assemblage of it, and oh my God. I mean, this was the full assemblage, each arm, you saw the cuts and the veins in each arm and the legs, all. I mean, it was because the MPAA, we kept having to cut that scene down and cut it down and cut it down and cut it down, right? So it was a very watered down version of it. The version that we saw was just fucking horrifying. It was just like, you walked out of that screening room going, it was horrendous.
Oh man, the way that the modern day is, I'm sure it's some anniversary somewhere down the line of, some special edition's going to come out, and you're going to get a phone call and be like, hey, we're going to release the super gory cut. Do you want to come back and
well, if they do it, there's an entire sequence in front of the from Nightmare on Elm Street 4 in front of the Elm Street house that never made it into the film.
Oh man,
huge sequence. It literally took all day to do one shot.
That kind of stuff. There's no. I'm surprised it honestly hasn't happened more often. Like, I guess there's two sides to the coin of like, don't release it or whatever. Like, fans are gonna find a reason to bitch about what they're gonna find a reason to bitch about. But these movies are so, there's a fan base out there that just by hearing you describe that kind of stuff, like, people would geek out at the chance to get to see that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's a good question as to whether any of it exists. It's not like New Line Cinema. Here's the thing. You see, now it's precious, right?
No, yeah, for sure.
Now it's a classic. Back then,
yes,
it was we're doing great. But then you're done, you go on to the next thing.
That's such a trippy thing to like consider, because now all the movies, like it seems like it's second nature to have like a low key documentarian on set just filming B-roll of production behind the scenes stuff, because
Right.
there's going to always be like a 45 to an hour documentary about the making of whatever you're watching. But
Exactly. That's right.
to think of anything like back in that day that was taken in that manner, like you just said, like at the end of the day, even if it's like Polaroids of you guys backstage, and whoever takes those photos are like, these didn't even come out.
Yeah,
it's like,
there was certainly a stigma to having a camera on set, though. You know,
was it?
When you saw somebody pull out a camera on set, it made everybody nervous, right?
Okay.
Because technically, you weren't supposed to do that.
Okay.
Right? I mean, because you weren't supposed to let anything leak out.
For sure.
So it just made people nervous, and it's kind of that way today.
Yeah.
You have to sign all kinds of releases as to what you can take pictures of, but also taking pictures wasn't like back then, wasn't like it is now.
Sure.
I mean, everybody's always carrying a camera, and it's not obvious when you take a picture, right? But back then it was, because you had a camera.
Yeah.
So everybody would kind of be looking at you like, really? You really need that picture, do you?
Yeah. That whole thing, I have to imagine the whole, scene back then of not wanting the leaks to get out. But now you're seeing stuff like the pages of the script are certain colors so they won't Xerox and stuff like that. Like,
right.
At the end of the day, like the thing, it's interesting to see like both sides of it again, because back then word had to travel. Let's say there was a leak, that leak is going to circulate. The radius of said leak is going to be less.
Right. There was a radius and a speed within which it traveled, and it wasn't very fast.
Yeah. Where today these guys are like, if something gets out, let's just pretend for a second that they have decided, the stars have aligned and they're going to revisit the Elm Street franchise. Blumhouse or some shit's going to do it. Damn, earth-shattering news. If they want to keep like the identity of who's going to be Freddy, if Robert would come back or if it's someone new, good luck keeping like that shit a secret. The second that gets out, like the entire world would know. Like
everything. Yeah. It's easy. You almost leak your own stuff in self-defense.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Like, no doubt. If anything, they'll at least get a vibe as to what the reaction is going to be.
Well, you make the story your own. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Man, we almost need to do, ask you to do like the Mick series on our podcast, because here we are. Our time is up, and we have not even like scratched.
I can. You know what? I can easily do a nightmare. This would be the nightmare version, and then the non-nightmare version.
For sure, yeah. Like is again like this gentleman. He's done stuff like you heard him talk about. He's done a bunch of work on the Hercules franchises that were all. I was telling my wife that I was going to talk to you, and the way that I explained to her who Hercules was. Kevin Servo is getting her to realize who he was compared to Lucy Lawless and Xena.
Right, because that was a takeoff of the show that we did, and then we started the Xena, and there was a while where we were running the Xena and the Hercules at the same time.
Yes,
and then I finished up Hercules and came home. It's all filmed in New Zealand. Yeah.
So that would be a ton of fun to get to talk to you about the stories from all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a bunch more that we could go on and on about. But for right now, tell everybody like what is the easiest way if they have a question or want to see what you're up to? What's the
You know what?
easiest way people can find you?
I think I have an Instagram page, but I very rarely actually successfully get on it. I'm on Facebook, and if you really have a question or something, just message me. If I have a book called Behind the Screams. It's all about Nightmare on Elm Street 4, because I found 4 to be really, really super interesting film, and it's got 50 interviews in it that are broken up according to the kills, and it just gives you such a great feeling for what it's like to be on a horror film set that's that big and complicated back then. And I have all kinds of stuff coming up. I have several things in the pipeline right now. I'm going to be directing The House in the Pines here towards the end of the year. A lot of things happening. Just if you want to actually grant you friendship, then what you have to do is you actually have to message me first.
There you go.
Because I get a lot of requests, and I don't even know what to do with them. I'm so far behind on friend requests. It's ridiculous.
So message them first.
Message me first.
There's the answer. Well, Mick, man, thank you so much for coming.
Oh, you're so welcome.
I definitely mean it, man. The series of these conversations is definitely a to be continued.
Okay, great. Sounds good.
Anyway.
Okay, I'm going to take off.
All right.